We appreciate you being here on this lecture series that we've been doing. Um, I am Dr. Michael Brown, the president of MAOPS, and we have with us this evening once again Jason Haxton, the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri. He's been directing that since 2001. You've got his bio there here. I told him I'd read it word for word if he wanted to, if that would help his ego. But he said no. So apparently he's got it helped already. We do not have any disclosures that we're going to make this evening. And we are going to move here towards our objectives. You can read those here tonight, but I will tell you and I'll summarize them for you. This is going to be a wonderful lecture here. This is something that we know that Jason has given this presentation before in many venues, but it is a lecture he created based on his knowledge of AT Still. And we're going to be talking about how we can communicate with patients using learnings from the founder of our profession himself, and that is Dr. A.T. Still. Before we proceed with that, I just want to say how grateful we've been to Jason for these lecture series. And if you're interested in actually watching some more of these, because we've done various aspects of learnings in medicine from AT Still, you can go to DOCME, which is our site that has these available, and you can watch these. They are available for you to get CME credit. So just want to make you aware of that, that if you like what you're learning from Jason tonight, that there is some more content available, many things. Our last one was on how AT Still dealt with mental health issues, and I thought it was very profound. And definitely worth listening to. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jason. Tonight's going to be a little bit different than some of our previous nights. Sometimes we've had a lot more back and forth, but there's a lot of content here, and Jason's going to do his best to get through it. And I will tell you this, one more housekeeping thing. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the evening, and I will kind of appropriately interrupt Jason and try to work those into our lecture tonight. So please ask questions. It makes this lecture go along a lot better, and makes us know that not everyone's asleep behind the computer. And so we please feel free to ask questions. You just do it in the chat. Open up your chat window right now so you have it available. And if you'll just add those questions in the chat, we will make sure that they get addressed by Jason this evening. And so without further ado, Jason, it's up to you.
Okay, Dr. Brown. And this is really a nice spinoff from the mental health program. This is actually, okay, so now we realize we've worked with mental health, but how do you look at it internally yourself and with normal patients with normal issues? Again, as you hear some things about psychiatry, when it says, well, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, remember, we're talking about the average person, not the person with severe either brain pathology or some aspect of that. But let's do a little bit of housekeeping in the sense of, let's get a little background on Dr. Still, a little things that's available. Just so you know, if you do have kids and you want to get them as a future osteopath in the family, legacy there, we do have an interesting book for 10 to 12-year-olds at the museum. You can just write us and we'll get you a copy of that. But it really tells the story of Andrew Taylor Still from his childhood up through his life and what he accomplished. I think that's kind of, again, a really nice book to have, or you can purchase it for your library in your town or maybe the school. Also, if you've not seen this documentary, it's an Emmy Award-winning documentary called The Feminine Touch. And so it's really how women became part of the profession. But you can't tell that story without talking about the profession. So you really get an equally good understanding of osteopathy that Andrew Taylor Still built and how it blends together with acceptance and diversity and working with women. So it's free. Just go to PBS and type in osteopathy and you pretty much get it. So when we look at this Dr. Still, this is prior to his starting the school. And here he is with a femur and a pelvis in his hand. And he must have looked kind of a little bit strange out on the streets. He'd go to the local schoolhouses, anywhere, public squares, anywhere that people would listen, and shared his ideas. And so I do enjoy that we get to continue that of sharing the ideas of this great profession. But because there was no real x-rays or instant anatomy, he would just carry a bag of bones. And even today, that'd be a little bit suspect of somebody walking around with human remains. But what Dr. Still says we're up to, and I think you guys already know this, is that we try to seek the health to prevent the disease. And still at 80 years old, Dr. Still was in pretty darn good shape, climbing trees, watching his diet, exercising regularly, watching his mental health. But, when we get a patient, no matter where they're at or how they got there, our job is to keep moving them a little closer to their best health so that they have this good journey of life. So some of his first teaching of osteopathy was about 128 years ago in this little schoolhouse. Now, remember, this was a frontier man, and, education wasn't his thing. Discovery was. And so he starts off with this little schoolhouse, but he introduces right away some Europeans who have an understanding of a curriculum in a full-fledged medical school. And so they, within a few years, grow this little schoolhouse into 600 students in a regular school. So as we look at this picture, I love this colorized picture. 5 of the 6 women of that first class are pictured here. And as we look in the middle, we see the skeleton with Dr. Still to the right and William Smith from Edinburgh, the Royal School of Surgery, 7 years of the best European medical education. Our first faculty, European. Our first graduate, European. And so when we look at osteopathy, not that this is really new to you guys, but it's a triune of 3. We've got the physical body, we've got the mind, and we've got the spirit. Now, the spirit is the intangible. The physical body is obviously there. The mind lets these 2 connect. And what Dr. Still always said was the amazing thing about us was the connection of these 2 into one force. And so the minds lets basically the 2 interact. And so we need to understand that, well, what is, spirit, why does that even matter? Well, what we are noting more and more is that, and as you will know, an optimistic patient seems to heal and do better. A depressed patient seems to shut down. And so we really do affect the parasympathetic nervous system through the optimism, which then kicks in the immunities and antibody production. This is just a case we're looking at the spleen and how the parasympathetic nerves can improve immunities and health. So we just throw that in there to say it's not hocus pocus. We now more and more can actually do scientific research to see how this uncontrollable area, such as thinking, can actually affect the physical body. And we do know that from stress, again, the parasympathetic nervous system, how it can affect the heart, how it can affect all aspects of health. So it shouldn't be surprising that Dr. Still saw the spirit and body as 2 things we need to keep focusing on. So today we're going to focus a little more on the spirit because that gets overlooked a little bit. But Dr. Still often said that when we work with a patient with a virus, the actual adjustment is pretty simple. I mean, you just make sure that everything is open and in the right place so that health, nutrition, the blood flow can go through and basically then remove the waste and disease and byproducts. And so again, he often said fever, we often, freak out about fever sometimes. He goes, no, fever is basically the body fighting in defenses. You don't want to cut that off unless it gets too drastic. And then the optimism, as Dr. Still said, believe you can get better. And for many patients dealing right now with COVID, and I know Dr. Brown is well over his head, as many of you are right now in Missouri, that belief of getting better has a huge impact on you fighting through the disease. And so Dr. Still says, nature has no apology. If we do the work and we line up the parts, food and rest are all that required is for the body to continue healing and fixing itself. And so when we think about health, again, we talked about these earlier, you want to eat healthy and food should be for energy. You want to make sure you get adequate exercise and have these positive thoughts. Keep the body flowing through no obstructions with osteopathic manipulation. And these are the things that are about the best things you can do every time with your patients. drink fresh water, natural foods. Dr. Still always said, long-lived animals eat few things and not too much. And you notice that we're losing Dr. Brown here because he's been actually watching his diet and eating. And it's certainly noticeable to me. And that'll also improve you in times of disease. Your immune system with adipose tissue, when you've got that body fat, your regulatory system, your immune system is completely out of whack. And so that's what we're seeing again right now with COVID is if you have those extra pounds, it's preventing you from doing the healing that you might normally be able to if you were at a better weight place. Again, long-lived animals eat few things and a few kinds of foods should be our lesson, not to eat and drink till the body's so full that no blood vessel can pass any part of the chest or abdomen. So Dr. Still would eat quick and trot, and he would eat some small meals all day. And as you can see, he was fairly thin. But as we know, if you're on the borderline of starvation, you actually add to your anti-aging and longevity. So get plenty of rest. Again, it's just common sense. And that's his treatment table there to the left. And you just take a little nap on it. And get walking every day. Dr. Still says we come from nature. You need to, for peace of mind, for mental health, we need to commune with nature. If we shut ourselves in, and I know it's busy right now for many of you, but get out every day. Not only is the exercise good, but you'll get the gossip of what's going on, see what's happening in the world. And so we can't recommend that enough. Ride a bike, get some exercise. Even in his 80s, Dr. Still was having joy with exercise and fun. Playing sports, you know, again, working in the community as best you can. I know it's a little difficult now, but again, that's another way to stay healthy. Exercise, climbing trees, even at the age of 83 in those boots. Can you imagine how slippery that would be? Up he goes. And he was up higher than the younger people. And get outdoors, as we said, every day. We're born of nature. He's writing his autobiography in this picture. Kick back and just enjoying the outdoors. And even right now, we're having decent weather for January. So make sure you take advantage of it. So kind of, again, the ideas of osteopathy came to Dr. Still because it is natural. And he says, you know, this little poem in his autobiography talks about being asleep at night and stuck into your dreams and sleep. And suddenly with the first little flushings of vibration of light in the dewy morn, he kind of got up as the earliest hours and nature seemed to be waiting. You know, again, in the earliest morning, vibration, light, everything's at its quietness. And he says, I tried to block out my memories and all my old ideas, and I just received. Again, the more you receive from patients, from the world around you, the better in tune you are. And that's what Dr. Still said. I got into this harmony, this rhythm. And as the sun kind of peeped up and exploded, I saw how we all work in perfect harmony, this Dafaic plan of the universe, and we're all part of it. We're all a perfect system. So again, appreciate nature, get into nature, love and be loved. You know, when you're loving someone, it's hard to be thinking about the bills, how lack of sleep you've had, what else is on the mind with the kids or down the road. When you're truly focused with intent of caring for that patient and nothing else, there is a magic connection that helps you have the intuition and understanding to help heal better. And a patient knows if you're connected to them. Be like a child and open to the possibilities. Be inquiring. Have fun. You know, Dr. Still's teasing one of his, Alice Patterson here. She taught women's health. Grew up with him, was a patient of him since she was a child. And he's just teasing her. You can see by the look on her face, she didn't want to laugh in front of the camera. And that was part of the trick, was getting her to laugh and look the fool. And keep your body in normal position. Good comes from unobstructed arteries and waste. And it's always easy to sleep. Like your car gets out of tune, so does your body. A little adjustment never hurts. Dr. Still was in a train accident in 1907. Some of you with more skill could look at his back and say, oh my gosh, talk about a train wreck, that's his back. But he did need quite a bit of manipulation since 1907 till his death because of that horrible injury. And he did tell us we're going to grow old, and this is about as bad as he looked. I mean, it's a journey of the soul, and the body is going to wear out. It's going to burn up. It's going to rot, And that's the way of life. We come in a spirit and we go out a spirit. And so what we're going to talk about today about the mind and stuff is very important. Dr. Still said, I just want you to know who you are, get you to realize you have a right to health. Don't ever give up. The body responds at whatever age, at whatever condition, it will respond to you if this is what you want. And then when you see the cures we bring, and when everything else has failed, you'll know that the foundation of osteopathy is a solid one. And so, Dr. Brown, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit. That just gave us the background on good old Dr. Still.
No, I appreciate the background. I think it's really important for us to realize, where this man came from. And I told you this earlier before we started, but maybe, as you talk about this slide right here, can you maybe give us just a brief history of how you got interested in AT Still and how we are here today and you acquired this information that you're about to share with us?
Yeah. Again, we all go through our education. I'm sure maybe some of you, upon getting your DO diploma, actually wondered if I could really help somebody. I mean, you heard all the diseases, all the treatments and that, but then when you actually come face to face with someone, I mean, a lot of doubt comes in. And this was kind of how I was with my counseling degree. I got it at Truman State University, some excellent faculty, and I felt that they prepared me with understanding, all the different ways of treating and all the great people of it. But when it actually came to helping someone, I really felt kind of like I was probably more trouble than good. And so it made me feel unprepared. And I wasn't sure if I even was in the right field. And so it is through when I was, working and finishing my degree that I had my first opportunity to start interacting with some of the physicians at KCOM at the time, and realizing that here was another way of health where you actually work with the patient, you work with the ideas of diet, exercise, mental health, and that these are small, simple things that have a huge impact on your ability to stay healthy. And so eventually found so fascinated by what I was seeing in the physicians at the neighboring campus that took the opportunity to become the director of the museum, which really let me dig deep into Dr. Still. 20 years of his personal letters, writings, every question, and probably have become what I would consider the authority on him just from that's what I do every day. Just to tell you how fascinating things are, some of you would be familiar if you had been to KCOM with our dissected nervous system. Dr. Brown, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. I understand we have one of, only like 3 or 4 in existence at that museum.
Correct. It's only been done 4 times to dissect the full human, and we did it twice. One's at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and we have the best one, I think, in our museum. Today, the strangest thing happened. A man called us up who'd lived in Los Angeles and said, I've got the dissected nervous system of a stillborn baby. So it was full term. And it says on it that the person came from the College of Osteopathy Physicians and Surgeons, which was the Los Angeles school. And it's a 1915 dissected infant. And he's offering it to the museum. So how wonderful to have this by a student, I mean, an osteopathic student. It's fascinating, but to know that this was done 10 years earlier than our piece. And as you know, when you look at children, they're developing. So you're treating a developing child versus someone my age, kind of like, I'm kind of built and you're adjusting me, but you're actually working more with the development of a child growing. So think of it, a seed, how you work with a seed that's budding versus a tree. Very different techniques. And so it is interesting to have these, I think, 2 different pieces that I hope we'll have it soon. So again, every day, that's why I love my job. When you think you've seen it all, the dissector was Wilbur Hurt, and he had been in World War I. So obviously he had seen the Spanish flu upon coming back. And it's just funny how everything connects even 100 years later. So anyway, moving on though, I didn't feel confident and I was looking for something. But one of the things that I did know about counseling was you need to have an interaction. And so you have to have a connection. So the best way to get that is to find out what motivates your patient, what motivates you. In this case, obviously, my wife, Lori Haxton, is the Vice President of Student Affairs, an amazing worker during these tough times. And my two children, Ross and Laurel, and I have a grandchild, Lakin. These are my personal and my love of my life. And just last week, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see my new Abarth. I am just a love for sports cars and roadsters. And so I traded my one in from last year for one this year with red leather seats and a racing stripe. And my wife absolutely hates it. She thinks I'm going through menopause. And I don't care. It is menopause. I'm fine with it.
I'm gonna
But
have
anyway,
to call you and see
these are
how
the
that
things.
drives after the next snowstorm, Jason.
Well, there's only about, in Missouri, as I said, there's only about a week you can't drive it. And that actually is the week I'll go and buy it because you get the best price. They knocked $10,000 off of it because it was in snowstorm. Anyway, we'll all go for a ride. Come up and we'll go for a ride in my red leather seat sports car. Anyway, the lecture, the material that we're going to talk about that we've looked at from Dr. Still actually comes from his private writings. They're not necessarily in any books. They were for the future, he said. I can't be happy and idle, so I'm going to use my pen and feed the minds that are coming as best I can. And so a lot of stuff is for you guys, and I'm really excited about that. And one thing that Dr. Still shared with us in these private papers, his religion. We're always worried. What are your politics? What are your religion? And he really shied away from sharing that for fear of alienating people. But finally he said, okay, I'm just going to write it down. My religion, love and justice to all. Imagine that. I mean, if we follow that creed, you love everybody. It doesn't matter your gender, your country, your color. And Dr. Still, he truly did look at this. He saw every person as a journey of a soul, and therefore he loved each person. He loved the soul that he knew was in each person. And so then he goes on to, as we mentioned, I also admire the works of nature and how they work in harmonious perfection. And he looks at the endless space, and he looks at the countless, satellites and planets all wheeling together. And it just gets all kind of, but we're all part of this wonderful system of the universe, the galaxy, space. But going back, love and justice for all. Now, what I think is funny about this, Bloom's taxonomy says that as children, we understand there is a moral sense of kindness and cruelness. So by saying love, you eliminate the cruelness, that even children, even infants before they can talk, have a sense. So he's going back to the basics of who we are. And then we all have a sense of fairness, equal divisions and resources. So justice for all. And we have a sense of justice itself. If you do good, good happens, and bad things should be punished. And then lack is empathy and compassion, that people suffering in the pain see what we can do to help it go away. Every infant, if a child hears another child crying, they'll cry just to show their support. And so again, when we look at Dr. Still, he really went to the essence of who we are. Love everyone, justice for everyone. And so this is a good foundation for how to work with your patients in a counseling mode. Dr. Still is the counselor. He had an amazing understanding of human behaviors, why we do, and our choices. And maybe he just picked this up from his journey. I mean, he'd seen enough in his life. He'd been treated badly enough. And the cause and effect, as many times he says, this, and then we see this. So why we do what we do, our behaviors, what are they coming from? And we're going to give you a clue. Again, this information will just spark you tonight, but you can do a little bit of research and really get a control. If you're already in control of yourself, your children, your loved ones, the people around you, your neighbors, your work environment. What's amazing is the tricks we're going to learn today are like food for the mind, and it works every time with every person. And so when Dr. Still says osteopathy is, among other things, biology, chemistry, it is psychology. There is always this mind, spiritual nature that we need to keep in the front of us. That is osteopathy. Dr. Tucker, who was a patient and then a student and then a faculty, said, with Dr. Still, it was soul to soul. Didn't have time for the niceties or shallow dialogue. This is that love. When you truly are invested in that person in front of you, there is nothing else going on. And there is a connection. You feel that connection, that magnetism. And Dr. Still had this to say about the physical body. I've given you the principles. Now you go figure it out. But now I want to understand that entangled element of the spirit, how that connects to this body. And so it's kind of important. Again, this is just Dr. Still's handwritten description of osteopathy, where he says it is, basically physiology, chemistry, anatomy, but also psychology. So I want to step now to what I think will be an important thing. We have an MD, so you can relate to him as a physician, and he decided to become a psychiatrist. And, a lot of our students are. Last year in graduation, I think we had 11 go into psychiatry residencies. So obviously people are getting crazier, or mental health is a bigger deal. So all the more reason this is probably a good talk. But Dr. Glasser, he invented what we call reality therapy, which teaches us not to be victims of our past or our feelings, that we have the power to have this optimism that brings us health and healing. He became a psychiatrist and went through the whole process. Kind of like Dr. Still went through medical school, blistering, bleeding, poisoning. And at the end of it, he says, this doesn't work. I'll find something that works, and started with the foundation of health. But what I just learned doesn't work. And what Dr. Glasser says is psychiatry for the average person, the normal person, doesn't work. So I'm going to find something that does work. Now, he says, here are some perspectives of Glasser upon receiving his degree. He said, for normal people, he says, first of all, I think when we label people, that 50% of the time, it's about half the time, it doesn't really directly help or work with people. So when you label them, you really take away the responsibility of them in their mental health. He says mental health illness, if it's not a brain pathology, then it really, shouldn't be identified in his belief that way. A little controversial. He says the other thing is rejection of psychotropic medication. And we've seen what we've done with the morphines and the opiates and all that. Again, we get people addicted because he says what the drugs do is alter the mind. And then it becomes even more difficult. Now, again, we're talking about normal people with normal issues, that you may need a break. You may need some healing for 4 to 6 weeks. But at that point, this should not be a lifelong endeavor, because it will keep the mind from functioning properly. And so you want to work with not having the drugs interfere with your normal functioning. And then the third thing is feelings. How often do people say, well, I'm depressed, so I'm not responsible, or I feel so sad, and so I can't do anything. And the reality of it is dwelling on feelings and talking about the past doesn't really help you. And I'm going to show you, it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Feelings are no more a signal than having to eat or go to the bathroom. Feelings are just the body's signal, the spiritual signal as this is working, this isn't working. And if it isn't working, we need to go towards something that works. It's like a sign. This doesn't work. And so stop and start doing something different. And so again, it's like when you're hungry, you can ignore that little first hunger pain and get busy. But hours later, you get a little sharper pain. And hours later, you get even more pain. And if you ignore eating, you're going to get really bent over cramps. Now, all you have to do is walk in and put a little food in, and that's all. It's just the body's signal that something needs to be done. You have to go to the bathroom. I'm in the middle of this lecture. I'm not going to get up. I get the signal. I should go and take a leak. I don't. And 15 more minutes later, I get a little bigger pain. Hours later, I'm starting to poison my system, and yet I still refuse to go. As soon as I relieve myself, the signal's gone. Feelings just tell us it's working, it's not working. And that now, what are you mentally going to do with it? If we hang on to it, it's like hanging on to hunger or hanging on to the need to pee and not. It does you no good. And so we're going to talk more about that. So feelings, I know a lot of you are invested in feelings. I'm going to teach you feelings are just a signal. And so when we have an action, anything your patient's doing, it begins with just actually physically doing something. And then we start thinking about what we're doing. And as you're thinking, that's when the feeling kicks. See, feeling follows thinking. So if you want to change your feelings, just change your thinking. So you're thinking, their feelings come in, and then a total physiology of the body comes in. So when you're in a behavior, there's a doing, a thinking, a feeling, and then a whole physical interaction of you. And that is what a total behavior is. So like AT still had to go back to the basics of health, Glasser went to the basics of what we're doing. And if something's working, we fight, we stick with it. If something isn't working, we fight, we run away. It isn't working. And there is a third element called freeze. When you're actually stuck, it's when you're in a situation where fighting and running don't actually, this is where we have post-traumatic stress disorder in someone. It can be from war where you don't know where to go and you're trapped, but it can be in a home environment where a child is being abused, that they may get into that freeze state, or spousal abuse. All I'm saying is freeze means that there seems to be no right decision and we get stuck. Now, picture an animal. When an animal freezes, going down the highway in my new Roadster, and suddenly a deer jumps out at night. And there's my bright spotlights on its eyes and deer in the headlights. It doesn't know which way to go. All it sees are those lights glaring down on it, and it doesn't know which way to go. And so that is when an animal freezes. Now, either I will run off the road and take the lights off of it, or hit it, or it will suddenly move. But the bottom line is, as soon as that episode is over, that animal will actually have a reboot. It'll actually shake and reboot and then go traipsing off. We need to have that ability to reboot in order to get back into functioning normally. So I just throw that in there, that when we look at behaviors, we're either keeping doing it or we want to run away from it. But sometimes we get stuck. So here is the final secret. I know we've talked a lot, but this is the meat of what we're going to say tonight. Survival, food, clothing, shelter, safety. If you don't have those things, there's not a lot of higher thinking going to go on. And Dr. Still never was motivated by money because he could hunt, he could make clothes, he could build a shelter, he could get fire and warmth, and he could shoot a gun and stay safe. So he had his survival needs met, and therefore was able to move to the higher needs. And so there are really, every time you do something, those of you that are physicians, why did you choose that difficult career? I mean, it really is sometimes a thankless direction in life. Sometimes it's a very thankful direction. But all we're saying is, why did you choose it? 4 things cause us to choose things. Power, which is importance, skill, ability, control. You know, we hear that power is negative. Unfortunately, power isn't good or bad. You can use it for bad, you can use it for good. But power is just what it is. It's kind of like electricity. Well, if you're touching an open a live wire, it's bad. If you're using it tonight to talk, it's good. But power is an ability, a skill. You that can do manipulation, diagnose, you have a huge skill. People that sing, people that play sports, people that have artistic ability. All we're saying, people that can work with numbers, accountants, we all know where we get our power and we gravitate to things that give us power. Everyone is different, but everybody has this. So when you see that patient, where are they getting their power? Where are you getting your power? We need a sense of belonging, attachment. It can be with people. It can be with pets. It can be with things like a favorite shirt, a ring, an antique, a home, a place. We know when we have belonging, that attachment. We need to have fun. Learning is usually fun. That's why you get the aha And when you figure things out, it's enjoyable. So experience growing is fun. And then freedom. Of course, we want to have choice and autonomy. So when we look at these things, and I put them in a circle because supposedly neither of these are more important than the other. These are the food of your mind, your spirit. These are the things you are gravitating towards every time you change your hairstyle, Dr. Brown, you pick out a new shirt, teasing. If you have attachment and belonging, you can get away with teasing. But what we're saying is that every time the car I bought, my gosh, yeah, power. It's fast. It's got great control. People look at it with envy. Trust me, I have more rubbernecking and snap. There's more OMM treatments being needed because I drive by all these guys in trucks and they look at that. So again, a sense of power with something, but belonging. I have owned these sports cars since I was in college. So I have a great attachment to those. Freedom. Again, just the ability to get and go, and fun. It is fun to see what the car can do because it's got a lot more abilities. So there's a reason why I gravitate to the Spider Fiat. But it is the same thing with children, a sense of belonging with your kids, a sense of freedom, being able to show and teach with them, fun, laughing, watching them learn, and the power of being dad and grandpa, and knowing that you've done a good job guiding them. Look at a marriage. This is simple marriage counselor. If you're in a great relationship, as I know Dr. Brown is, there's a sharing of the power. There's a sense I belong and I'm loved. There's a sense that I get to be myself still. And there's a sense of having fun. And we're going to keep growing in this relationship. But I tell you, if only one person's getting that and the other person isn't, that relationship isn't going to last. That friendship isn't going to last. You need to be giving these things in order to, or getting these things in order to stay invested. And it's the same with the patient. If they don't feel that they're being listened to and empowered, that you truly care about them, that you're looking at options and freedom and choices for them, not that this is the way it's going to be, and that we're going to learn together with this and give you the power. Patients that thrive, you're investing in these and they want more and they'll be back to you. But if you're telling them and you're not giving them the opportunity and they don't think you really care, they'll move on to someone else. When that patient comes on, it's so fun because anybody will tell you, oh, by the way, are you married? Yeah. Well, tell me about your relationship. And that's where you can sense, do you have pets? A sense of belonging. Do you have a favorite place to be? A favorite song? We get belonging in so many ways. You can find out all these things. What are you good at? What's your skill? What's your job? What do you do when you're not working? What are your hobbies? Those will tell you about their power, skill, and knowledge level. And again, fun. When was the last time you were laughing? What were you doing? Freedom. Where do you always feel best and at ease, or what makes you not worry about any problems? You can find these in any person, every child, every kid in high school, sports, football, tennis, cross country. Everyone has to have these things. And so if you can't get them in a positive light, sometimes we gravitate to the negative light. For instance, drinking, drugging. When we're on drinks and drugs, we think we're powerful. We think everybody loves us. We've got belonging. We have the freedom to do anything we want, and it's fun. I'm a funny guy. But as soon as the drugs wear off and you don't have a job, you don't have your family, you don't have any money, the reality sets in that this isn't. And they get high again to have that sense of those needs. People don't try to fail. They're doing the best they can with what they know. We can only give them information to say, is this working? And the true alcoholic, if they don't kill themselves, or the drug taker, is they'll hit that point where they wake up and say, this isn't giving me any of these things. And that's really about the only treatment that works. Is they call it rock bottom. And they look at it and they finally agree, this is giving me nothing I want. And they just turn it away and start moving in a positive direction. I worked in drug and alcohol counseling, and it didn't matter how many times somebody went into treatment. If they wanted to keep doing these things to get their needs met, we had to show them a different way. Juvenile delinquents, once we explained why you're doing these things for power and bullying, and you think you belong with these people, and turn them to, here's where you can help kids and get belonging. Here's where you can use your life experiences to help others. Here's where you can have some fun. And here's where you get to decide how you do it. You can turn a kid that's a juvie delinquent into a citizen that ends up having a decent life. And I have many of those. I worked in the juvenile office. And so again, I just want you to sit back for a minute and think. Everything you do. I live in a historic antique house. I like the belonging to history. I like the power of having something that no one else has. I like the freedom of decorating it in this old way and learning all the history of this time. That's why I like historic homes. But you know what? A modern home's nice too. Clean glass design. Again, we all pick the cars we pick, the clothes we wear, the hairdo, the glasses. As little as it might seem, every action follows into these 4 areas, and they do with your patients. So when we look at this, the only person whose behavior you can actually control is your own. You can't make anyone do anything. Reality is where the power is. And as long as you have the power, you might be able to manipulate it. But as soon as that power's gone, bam. Somebody walks up to me with a gun and says, I want your wallet. Reality is they have the power. Now, here's the thing. I can't make them not shoot me. Now, he said, no, give them the wallet. They can still shoot me, even if I give them the wallet. I had a friend who said, yeah, I got held up. And I said, well, here, I'm taking out my driver's license and credit cards. You can have the wallet and the money. And he goes, well, you could have got shot. He goes, I could have got shot anyway. Reality of it is you can't make anyone do anything. You can set the tone, and they may want to work with you because they feel that that's in their best interest. But behavior-wise, you can only control your own. And in your behavior, you can only give them information. Like we're doing tonight, we're teaching you about your choices. Why does Dr. Brown have so many amazing kids? Because he has a sense of love and belonging and power. Sometimes probably a lack of power. But I guess what I'm saying is maybe just chime in here for a minute. Dr. Brown, listening to this, can you tell me where your power comes from?
Yeah, in fact, can you go back one more slide for me?
Yep.
And as you were saying this, and I bet everybody on this call is doing the same thing. Now, I like the circle better, actually.
Okay, we'll go down the circle.
So I like pictures. And so, no, definitely, for me, I see my whole career as a physician, and I'm just going to limit myself to that. I could put myself in my personal life here too. But my choice to become a physician was, as most people know, I'm a very technical person. Everybody was surprised that when I was actually a high school student, I got a recruiting offer from Microsoft to, basically go down their, educational path and work from them. And everybody was shocked when I turned it down. And really, for me, it was, everybody was doing informatics and technology, and all my friends were going into that. And medicine was something that none of my friends were doing. And I was like, well, hey, that's something I know I can do that I know not everybody can do. And so I picked that, and really you go down to that freedom, choices, and options there. Why did I choose to become a physician? Along the way, we had so many options where I could have become a chiropractor, or I could have dropped out early, been a nurse. And there's nothing wrong with any of those choices. But I knew that ultimately I wanted the freedom to be able to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the person calling the shots and not having to report every single decision to somebody else. So, and then, it's fun. I love it. It's got, and then it's, and then you have the osteopathic side of things. If there was ever a career that has a sense of belonging and love, it's osteopathic medicine. I mean, we are just one big group and body. But I just one aspect of my life, and I can see that in there. So yeah, no, it's definitely, these are the driving forces I can say in my life, and I can go through my own personal life and show that as well. I do have a question for you regarding this, Jason.
Sure.
Do you feel like there has to be a balance of these in people's lives? I mean, is it something that, one thing can be out of balance, or one thing, is not, do
Well,
you feel like they need to be balanced?
I think that's why it's a circle, because you equally need these, like nutrition. This is food for the mind. And so you would need a balance of these. Again, when here's the thing, someone can get some of these, but you want to know what someone's lacking, they will attack you with what they don't. So if someone comes up to you and says, you did this wrong, I cannot believe this, I paid for this service, you're an idiot. What are they doing? They're attacking you with power. It's telling you, this person's starving to death. And the last thing they need for you is to bustle up to them and say, well, listen here, bucko, because now you have challenged that power that they're already starving from. And this is why, to diffuse the situation, saying, you are absolutely right. I can see where that has affected you. You respond in belonging, but saying, there is no excuse. There's no more to talk about. The best way to diffuse them is to give them what they want, which is give them the power they want. And there is nothing else to fight for. They've got it. And so, when someone is starving for affection and belonging, you can see it in them, that they'll sacrifice anything, it seems, for it. So these things do get out of balance. But they should be. And the reality of it is, though we tend to think power is more important, belonging is. And this is what Dr. Still keeps bringing us back to. Of the four, a sense of connection, love, and fairness is more important than money. Dr. Still shunned it. Clothes, titles, the power things, push power away, it comes back. Focus on your belonging. And so, I'm glad you asked that, but in my life, I tried to prove this wrong. Here's the thing. Try to prove this is wrong. Look in your life at anything, where you live, the clothes, your car, your vacations. Look at everything in your life, your loved ones, your relation. Try to show me where this does not play into it. It does. Why we do what we do. We're feeding these mental needs. This is food for the mind. And if you don't have it, this is the thing. The person that withdraws into themselves can't find these in the real world, and they will shut into themselves and basically isolate, because they're afraid that they can't get in the real world. But if you offer, they're constantly checking. And if you want it, and Dr. Glasser said there were these closed cases where they're collecting their feces in little boxes and they're not talking. But he goes, if you go and you interact and you give them the time, they would come right out of those shells. They would come back into the real world. They want to be part of the world. They just don't know how to get it. And this is why, again, by involving them, it can work. So I did. I tried for 10 years and finally said, you know what? Everything I do follows into this circle. And knowing that makes it so I can look at other people and see, what are they doing? What are they needing? So I had this osteopath who had this elderly woman, and she would come in almost every other week for a treatment. And she said, Jason, I'm at my wit's end. I've worked her, and there is nothing physically wrong with her. And yet she comes in at the beginning and says, I'm in pain. I want you to help me. And I do a basic treatment, and we talk and stuff. And at the end of the hour, she's like, I feel so much better. And she goes, I said, I did nothing to her. I really didn't. I said, you did a lot. I said, tell me about this woman. Is she in a relationship? She goes, well, her husband died a few years ago. She have children. Yeah, but they've moved away. They don't interact very much. Mm-hmm. I says, does she get out about? No, she's pretty much a home recluse. She's on a fixed income. And so I started saying, so do you see why she comes to you? She has a belonging, a care, a connection. You listen to her. You care about her. You empower her. You have fun and you chat and you tell her about your life, and she lives vicariously through you. And she has the freedom and choice. I said, and she goes, well, now I figured out why, she keeps coming. I said, but now you can guide her to get involved maybe with some activity or hobby, get her out a little bit, get her into other groups so that she can meet these needs outside of you, because she's coming in every other week for a treatment that she doesn't need. But I do think that's what I'm saying is, she goes, And after she worked with this woman a few more months, she goes, you'd be surprised at the growth in her as I've guided her towards her needs. We've talked about these things, and she's doing really well. She doesn't see me as much. So anyway, so again, here's the interesting thing. For those of you that have psychological problems, they're always related to a relationship, and that relationship is right now. The funny thing is, when we look at our past, if you were victimized as a child, I mean, that's horrible, but you're an adult now. You're no longer a victim. And if you want to dwell on what's happened in the past, and this is what Glasser was saying, it does you no good. It keeps you trapped there. That you need to accept that it was not a great point and you learn, but today that person, could not do these things to you. You're free of them. You're an adult. You would say no. You would call the law enforcement. You would protect yourself. And so again, we need to grow away from these bad experiences. We all have them, but we can't dwell in them. And feelings, the funny thing is, this is why a song that played when we were in love would take us on a high, or played maybe when we lost somebody would take us on a low. We start thinking, and thinking moves us to the feelings. So the thing is, if you don't like your feeling, it's what you're thinking. And so I don't know how much time do we have here yet.
We're getting towards the end. We're at 7:53.
So I want to just show you as an example. Right now, imagine an apple. And so right now, everybody who's listening, just imagine an apple. Of course, now what is an apple? Is it green? Is it red? Is it bright red? Is it sweet? Is it tart? When we say apple, we're not giving you much. Is it tart? Again, we can think and imagine all these apples. Now, I'm telling you, I want you to tell me when the last time is that you laughed, that you really belly laughed. So right now, when was the last time you laughed really good? Think about that. And that's the trick. You've got to think about it. Thinking brings you back to that laughter. Now, if I tell you be sad, just stop what you're doing and be sad. Oh, I don't want to be sad. Nobody wants to be sad, but be sad. You know how I be sad? My mother was dying, but I thought she was no longer interacting in the world. My sister told me she's catatonic. She's not talking to anybody. And I said, well, keep me abreast and I'll come down if things change. And they filled her with morphine because she had pneumonia and they were going to make it easier on her. And I asked how my mom was doing. My sister said, well, she'll be dead in a few hours. They just give her, but before she was talking to each of the children. I said, what? You told me she was catatonic. No. She gave each of us a word: faith, love, work, hard work. And I got really sad because it's like, but I didn't come because you told me, she couldn't communicate. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a miscommunication, and we all do this. My sister doesn't have a bad bone in her body, but something went really wrong. She goes, well, after they gave mom the morphine, she was supposed to die in a few hours. And I said, well, just keep me abreast. Well, all that night, she didn't die. She kept coming out of the morphine, eyes wide open as if she was drowning, and then she'd go back under. And it went on for 3 days. And finally she died. And I wondered if she was looking for her 5th child, why I wouldn't come, and it's a very sad thing. And I get teary-eyed thinking about it. And I could stay and I could hate my sister. I could be sad about what happened. But what I realize is my mom knew I loved her. My sister had a miscommunication. I've learned never to let that happen again. And that's what I'm saying. So I start changing my thinking and that sadness goes away because it's truly a sad time, but I can't be stuck there. And all it is sadness was a signal I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't want my mom to suffer that I didn't love her. But then I realized she does know I love her. You don't live with a person 50 years and they don't know you love them. So you have to change your thinking and you come out of it. but I could stay with my thinking of sadness and I could live there the rest of my life. And some of your patients are doing that. Maybe some of you are doing that, not forgiving yourself, or change how you're thinking about it, you know? And so I hope that helps you. So what's in the past made us what we are, but we're not stuck there. We need to move into the future. So Dr. Still uncovered it. He says it just seemed logical, kind of like Dr. Still and health seemed logical. And so very similar approach with people. So if you really liked what you've heard, you can buy this book and it will literally take you through step by step all these ideas and build your strength in knowing yourself. And therefore you'll know others. So I never feel at odds with any stranger because I already know why they do what they do. I just have to ask them the questions and we can then get that interaction. Just as you now know about my wife and my children and my passion for Roadster, we already have a good start towards interacting together. So I hope you've enjoyed the talk, and you know, you got to work with your patients, keep it nice, and that's pretty much our lecture. We come from good stock and a natural ability. So I leave it to you, Dr. Brown, to wrap her up or whatever.
Does anyone have any final questions? We haven't had anybody type in any questions. I will say that it's been a great lecture, and definitely things that I can see in my patients. I think it's we naturally easily want to go to other people and see that in them than we do in ourselves. But we can definitely see that in ourselves, and I think it's a great something for us to always consider. We have somebody that raised their hand, and
so unmute them.
Yeah, we can unmute you
We'll unmute
there,
everybody.
Dr. Cantor, if you'd like to talk there. I have made it so you can talk. You by default are muted, so you have to unmute yourself if you want to talk. But you're welcome to chime in anytime, Dr. Cantor, if you'd like to.
Okay, I've unmuted.
Great, sir. Go for it.
I really feel like you sort of painted a picture of my 42 years and how happy I am. And I've had medical students come around with me and they said, you're like that first physician I've seen that's so happy with everything he's doing all day long. And now I can't say that I am now, and I would say that I actually this last year had my first bout of verging on burnout. And I read about burnout and I realized that 79% of us are now burned out. And it has to do with the fact that I am not the appendage of a computer, but the fact that I get to do OMT and the fact that that keeps me connected with people. And I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about the older patient that would come in to see my dad, who was a DO also, every month, like clockwork. And I had to learn, you know, I didn't have hubris and think, well, why? I'm not going to have them come in once I take over. They just need to come in once a year for a physical. But knowing what you could do for them, and even having a patient the other day kindly asking me, but how's your ex-wife doing? You know, and I'm going, you know too much. I'm thinking, you know too much. But I was modeling for them, you know, relationships. So anyway, I'm very happy to hear this, and it just sort of reinforces what we do and why. It's funny because I see the skeleton behind you, Dr. Brown. I have a poster from an art store that's a picture of the musculoskeletal system, muscle system in the skeleton. And it's kind of a cartoonized thing with French names on it. And the patient said, what's the difference between you and an MD and a DO? And I said, that's the part they forget about. And they go, but that looks like most of the body. And they said, okay, I can't help it. That's true. So anyway, I will calm down here. But thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cantor, for sharing. I mean, that's wonderful. And I'll tell you, you know, what you see behind me is my telemedicine setup. I had a school teacher that had a setup, and hers looked better than anything I had. Mine was just a plain wall, so I vowed to do better. So I actually make it, and when I actually do telemedicine, you can't see the white coat hanging up there. It actually is a bit more of a square, but there's a little bit of everything in my background there, things that I love. You've got the skeleton, the medicine, and actually on that bookshelf there, that's actually an old skep beehive that's kind of hard unless you see me zoomed up that you can tell. But you know, as many people know, I'm a beekeeper by hobby, and then I've got some plants that I love, and so it's just, you know, it's there. And Dr. Cantor, your comments made it. You know, the first thing I was thinking when Jason presented this was burnt out physicians, and realized that you know, burnt out physicians definitely are missing a lot of things in this circle that was presented by Jason. You know, the computer itself takes away that freedom, those choices, those options that we had, and we went into medicine. And so we have to find ways to regain that so we can, you know, resolve this burnout we're dealing with.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point. You purposely set up your office
Mm-hmm.
so that there is this kind of feeling and look, kind of for interaction, power. You know what I'm saying is it didn't just happen. And you even remember someone else's because it had an impact on you. And so I do think that nothing we do, just as you're looking at my antique house and there's and there's my daughter up on the wall and there's a wingback chair that eases up. Again, I love this old lifestyle, but that choice theory book might help a lot of physicians that are experiencing burnout. What's going on? And what can you do to gain the control? Because that's what Glass was about. You're not stuck. So what can you do? You can't change sometimes what's going on, but you can change how you work with it, how you think with it, and how do you gain those other things and other things you're doing. So to me, it actually has made me feel that I've had a better life. And when young people hear this early, it really puts them in control. But you can hear it at any time. And even though I don't always make good choices, I accept that I made that choice, and you can't feel bad about it because you understand it. So.
Well, Jason, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for participating in tonight's lecture. I thought it was wonderful and great to how you're able to tie in A.T. Still and you know, original osteopathic medicine, as we would say. So once again, Jason, thank you for your time this evening, and thank you everybody for participating, and hope you all have a wonderful evening.